Hello, my name is Violeta Jimenez, and I'll be doing my presentation on calculus in architecture because it is one of my majors that interest me since I'm not currently a college student with the major. And I have to do it like this because this is my school Chromebook and they blocked screen recording. And another thing, they blocked Canva, so that means I can't log in, so I had to remake this on Google Slides. By the way, I want to apologize for my pronunciation or occasional stutters in this presentation. Thank you. So this is calculus in my majors. So like I mentioned before, architecture is one of the majors that I've been interested in, and that is since I went to Chicago in this spring, and I learned about the history of the city and I kind of what architecture brought into Chicago and how they utilized it, as well as one of my teachers recommended it to me because I've mentioned that I'm struggling to pick a major, and she mentioned that architecture might be something that I like, so which is why I pick architecture for my presentation. So architecture, what does it do? Well, it's the designing of buildings, and it's basically to ensure that you build a building for the city, not a building in a city. You kind of want to build for the city in a way. Like I mentioned, when I went to Chicago, a lot of the buildings were made specifically to fit in that lot they were put in. I just want to come back and say how I forgot to mention environmental architecture, which is when a building is made to fit the area where it's at. For example, there's a building in Chicago that curves around the riverbank, and I think that's a very beautiful building, as it shows that the person who created it had be made in and chose it to be unique to Chicago. Another building that is environmental architecture is these ones, and they were built by Jenny Gang. And the reason that makes them environmental architecture is that there's two floors, I think it's 46 and 47, that are basically not checking. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but these two floors are just pillars holding up the building, and it's made so the wind can just pass through and it will not shake too much or especially not fall down. And that goes into architecture when you're building for safety, and this is actually calculated. I think this is physics and some calculus about how much wind it can take and if it's even safe to do 2-3 floors. So like, what does it do? So architecture can show how time passes by in the city. When I went to the boat tour in Chicago, the tour guide was giving us a lot of information about the city and kind of like the date and time of each building, where the inspiration came from, why it ended up in Chicago, who built it, and why it's important to the city. And what second bullet point means is if you have an empty lot and it's taking up space and it looks really bad, an architect's job is to figure out what to do with that space and how to make it fit the environment and the city without making it look bad. And it's to it provides housing, utilities, doctor's offices, libraries, whatever you can think of. And you want it to be functional and durable, while also being pretty, which is what it does. So how is calculus used in architecture? Well, you have a roof and it's very slanted like this. You want to calculate the slope of it, and you want to be able to find the optimal shape of said slope, curves, walls, material, and a bunch of stuff. And so this is the equation that we'll be focusing in for today. It is the rate of change formula, and it's used to find the slope, like I said before, in roofs. So the way that it works and the way that they use the rate of change formula is like this. As we can see, the rate of change formula is just a secant a certain building, and you want to calculate the slope of this. And if you wanted to calculate the rate of change, you would be able to take it by doing something like this. As you can see, this is the roof, and this is our y-axis and our x-axis. So you have x1, x2, and you just take this minus this and this minus that, and you get your slope. And with your slope, you're able to figure out what you're really building and how you really need to build it, because otherwise, without your slope, you really wouldn't be able to, you'd be going in blind. Right? So you use it to find the slope in roofs, and you also can use it to find the arcs of domes. So for example, I'll get into that later. And like I said here, disclaimer, this is a Calc 1 class, and a lot of my research brought me to a lot of Calc 2 or even Calc 3 applications. So I try to only use the ones that I knew about and that I learned about in this class. So what does the equation do? So the rate of change formula, this is gonna sound really repetitive, but it calculates the slope, right? So then, once you have your slope, they kind of take it and they work with it, and they research materials that they can use, and what is the most cost-effective material they can use for said slope, while it being durable and so it doesn't collapse under the weight. Because if it's too heavy, and while it might be durable, it can't work with that. But if it's too flimsy and light, yes, it's not going to collapse. It also won't hold its own weight, and it will no longer be useful. So the importance of this, of calculus in architecture, is for optimization. Like I said, you want to find the right materials and the right amount of materials, but you want to optimize it, because if you don't optimize it, it's a waste of money, and that could be spent somewhere else. Safety, so this goes hand in hand with optimization. You don't want to make a faulty building, because if you don't optimize it correctly, it can collapse under its own weight, and that is a safety regulation that you cannot deal with. And longevity, it's about the durability of your buildings, and that's how these three are basically the combined of how maths works into this. Because with the rate of change formula, you find the slope, and then with the slope, you work with it to make sure that you're using the right materials and the right amount of materials so it's safe. And once you have the right materials, shape, and slope, you put your best work forward and make sure it's durable and that it lasts for a long time so it doesn't collapse. What do they do with calculations and the information that they gain? So this is really repetitive, but once they have all that information, they know what materials to use and how to make it long, durable, safe. They also need to take into account how do they make it aesthetically pleasing so it's not an eyesore, and that's a combination of what they do with all the math. So this is a notable example. This is the St. Louis Arc, and this is an example of how calculus was used for it. Even though it is technically a higher level math, this is still a parabola that they modified. I think it's a parabola of cosine of hyperbole squared, plus 6,200 feet up in the air, I think. And the way math was used is they calculated not the slope but the arc of this, and they were able to find the optimal materials for it, the optimal arc. Because if it's too skinny, then it's not gonna hold up and it's gonna collapse. And if it's too long, then it won't have enough pressure to keep it like this. Because if it's too skinny, it just collapses because of the wind. But if it's too like this, it's too wide, then it doesn't have enough pressure here to keep it still. I thank you for listening to my presentation.